thing is history, it's stories. So what stories are we telling? It's problematic to not talk about Black people at all, but then it's also problematic to only talk about like the magical, exceptional Negro, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you hear about Martin Luther King and you hear about Rosa Parks, but only in very isolated. We've created like a caricature.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about Rosa Parks as being an advocate and how she got into the game by advocating for Recy Taylor, who was raped by I think five white men, in the 1940s, and how much of an activist that she was, and this was a decision and a choice for
Mm-hmm.
her to participate in the boycott in this way, and how many other people were associated, with that.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls podcast. I'm Aries.
And I am Kim.
And we have a special guest today.
Yes.
We surprised her right before we started recording and told her that she is our Bold Black Girl of the Month. And her name is Dr. Jania Hoover.
Welcome, Jania.
This is my girl though, so I call her Nia, and but she is a doctor, so we got to put some respect on her title.
Tell me how you all met.
Oh, okay. So me and Jania met through Run Club, and I ain't ran since I don't know how long, but we met through Run Club, and it was kind of like a small group of the club that kind of started clicking together, kind of like similar. We're all jokesters. We all have sarcasm, like a major. So all the a-holes basically kind of banded together. And so why am I seeing red? Oh, and so we just clicked basically. And I think it was interesting. It was very organic. Like it's me and Jania and a couple other girls that really just started gravitating as a friend group. So we've traveled together. This is the person who I can travel with, who I can kick it with, who I can sleep in the same bed with. When we travel, we prefer to be in the same
bed,
same room, same bed. Like we are like homies for real. And so you know how Kim knows.
Look, that's how you know it's a friend. When
we didn't travel.
And if you can lay in the same bed together.
Me and Kim have traveled and laid in the same bed together. And we've also traveled and was like, I ain't traveling with this other girl no more. Seriously. So welcome to the podcast, Jania.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is one of my absolute favorite podcasts. I listen to all of the episodes, and podcasts are actually kind of difficult for me to stay caught up on. A lot of my friends, they can listen at work, and I don't have that luxury. So y'all are one. Even if I do get behind, I have to go ahead and catch up and listen. So
we appreciate that.
And she always sends me notes like, okay, so I'm listening to the episode right now, and this, like put her 2 cents in on stuff, and I'm like, yay, she listens. So I'm excited, and we really were like, it was unanimous, like to have you on, especially right now while everybody's like talking about Black History Month and all this stuff. And I was like, well, if we're gonna talk about history, I need to bring Jania on because I am historian. I'm like, I am not the one. So Jania, she teaches 11th grade history, and she teaches at a private school that's predominantly white. Would you say?
Okay, absolutely.
And so she has a very unique way that she incorporates Black history just in her regular teaching. It's not like it's February, y'all, we doing Black history now.
Right.
You know, it's like really full education with really how I would want my kids to be learning history altogether. I think we talked about a little bit last week about like just wanting, if we just told the truth, we would just be learning history, right?
The whole truth. Though.
So Jania, talk to us a little bit about how you, first of all, how you started as a teacher, because you started in predominantly Black schools in Atlanta. So let's just kind of take us back to when you first decided that you wanted to be a teacher and why history.
Back
this
down
was
memory lane.
Yeah, because I'm like, that would have been the last subject I probably would have chose.
Exactly.
Man, so I wasn't intending to be a teacher. When I was growing up, I thought I was going to be a writer. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Doctor thing was very short-lived. I took AP biology in 11th grade and I struggled, and I wasn't one to typically struggle in school. And so I was going to see the teacher and trying to get it. And I think he was a little frustrated with me. And he asked me, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to be an obstetrician because I love babies. Well, you're going to have to take these classes times 10. I went home. I was like, Daddy and Mom, I need to drop this class. I can't do it. I don't want to anymore. And then now even watching Grey's Anatomy, I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never be cutting on people. And, you know, I like babies, but not that much. So I knew that I would have to go to college to do whatever. I didn't have any talents or interests that didn't require advanced education. So I went to school undecided. I went to Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, California. And I took a class on Introduction to African American Studies, the spring semester of my freshman year, with Dr. John Davis. Wow. May he rest in peace, changed my life. I took that class and I felt, number one, that was the first time I ever had a Black teacher. And we were just talking about Black people every single day. And it was things that some of them I knew because my grandparents on my mom's side, they were always telling me stories, giving me books. I've always been a reader. I had a set of books when I was a kid, African Americans in Achievement, and they had a separate one for different people. And I would just read those books and I loved them. And my grandma always told me, okay, this is your history. And then you go to school and you learn their history. So I never the twain met until college. And so I loved that class. I did all the reading. I did the extra reading, you know, the stuff you ain't even have to do. Like
that's when you know you love a class.
You're passionate.
Look. And so I ended up majoring in that. Like I decided then, I said, okay, I'm going to go be a teacher because I need to change the way that history is taught. Like this should be what everybody learns, right? Now, this was my freshman year in college. I didn't know anything about how schools actually worked. So I was naive in the sense that I really thought that, okay, I'm just going to become a teacher and then I'm just going to go teach, you know, put Black people into everything. And then, you know, everything will be much better and much different. But I did decide then to be a teacher. So I majored in African American studies. I minored in education. I also minored in philosophy, but I wasn't ready to go start teaching right after college. I didn't want to do my student teaching my last semester in college because I was going to have to get up early, and I wasn't about that life. I was trying to party and have fun. So I went straight to school after that, got my master's and my teaching credential at the University of Georgia in Athens. So that's how I got to Georgia, did all my education stuff, did my student teaching at a white district in the area is Walton County. So it's like in between. So Athens is about an hour and a half outside of Atlanta, east of Atlanta.
I heard of Walton County during the election. We was looking at all the counties, like which one's the vote? Walton County. I kept hearing that, and I'm hearing that. I was like, where are the other votes at?
Yeah, it's a whole lot of white people, and it's also a dry county. So there were four Black people that worked at that school, and they all worked in service. So, you know, they were either cleaning the school or they were working in the cafeteria. And I mean, every day I came into that school, we always spoke because it was just them. And I knew I didn't want to work there. And I said, oh no, I could never work at a school like this.
Right.
So that's important to my current situation. So I started teaching in '05, y'all. Like when Chris
Woo, that feels
Brown
like
was
a long
brand
time.
new,
She said Chris Brown.
like run it, you know, and
He's so
lean with it,
popular.
rock with it. Like that was
Right.
my early years of teaching. So I started out in a district just south of Atlanta, Clayton County. And for those of y'all that pay attention to the election,
Yes.
that was one that was key to flipping Georgia blue in November, and then also in January too. So I stayed up, y'all. I was like, Clay, stand up. So yes, I started then. I did my first 7 years in that district, and then I moved to teach in Atlanta public schools. The cheating scandal is what their national kind of notoriety is, and I was there in predominantly Black schools, low income schools, predominantly Black schools, Black staffs, principals, you know, teachers, administrators. It was just all Black everything. And growing up, I never had that ever. I'm a military kid and I grew up in Hawaii. So I loved it. I loved everything about it. And now I'm in Texas. I'm in Dallas, and I just was frustrated with some of the things that, you know, if you know any teachers, right? With, you know, I got really good results on my kids did really well on the tests. So I had to continue teaching those tested courses. And I didn't like that because I couldn't teach, or I had to work harder to bring in. Of course, I could teach the stuff I wanted to teach, but there were a lot more eyes on, you know, okay, how does this relate to the standards? And how does that relate to the standards? I got written up one time because my lesson was about the Mexican-American War. And we were supposed to write all the stuff on the board, your standard and all of this. And my lesson was all about the Mexican-American War, and the standard was about manifest destiny. So I got a write-up, had to go in and talk to the principal, and he was like, well, you're supposed to have your standard, and your standard was manifest destiny, and you were talking about the Mexican-American War. And I was like, yeah, you know, manifest destiny, for those that don't know, is about, you know, how the United States expanded westward, you know, how they pushed out the Native Americans and took the land, and the idea that it was their destiny or their God-given right to do so. So in my mind and everybody else, the Mexican-American War
It's just that.
And he got it. He said he got it. And I was like, okay, so you're going to take this back, right? You're going to take it off my file. No, because you should have said that.
Oh my God. Well, what did I say?
Was that in Atlanta or Texas?
This is in Atlanta. Yes. So that was part of the reason. Right. So that contributed to me, you know, just always being frustrated. I loved the kids, which is what you'll hear from a lot of teachers. You know, most people know somebody that either currently teaches or used to teach. And they left not because of the kids. They left because of all the other stuff that we have to deal with. So I had to decide. Yes.
I was going to say, so if you came, okay, so when you decided like, okay, I'm going to, when you came to Texas, did you go straight to private school from Atlanta?
Yeah, I decided that I was leaving that job, you know, and I knew I wasn't going to, you know, I wasn't going to come back to that school. So I had started the process of looking. And when I first got frustrated 2 years prior, I wasn't open to leaving Georgia at all. Wasn't even open to leaving Atlanta. So I just moved, you know, to the next district over. So this time I was like, okay, I can't keep moving every 2 years. And I need to find something where I can stay. And my former coworker had worked in independent schools, also called private schools. And he had told me years ago, hey, you need to make this switch. And I was like, oh no, I don't want to teach those kids. I could never teach those kids. I need to be with
my people,
my babies. I need to teach the Black and brown kids because they're the ones that need a teacher like me that knows her stuff and is committed to the work. Like that was my thing.
Okay.
So Like how you end up in this private school.
Yes.
We'll get into that. I had to shift basically from my sanity. I was not diagnosed, but probably depressed. My sleep was all messed up. The stress levels were just through the roof. But I knew that I wanted to still teach. Like a lot of people I know, they left teaching. They're doing real estate. One of my homegirls, she's a nurse, a labor and delivery nurse. Like we are all over the place. But I knew I still wanted to teach.
Bureaucracy pieces.
Okay. And I wish teachers got paid more for what they do.
Right. So I got with this agency that, basically matches people with jobs in independent schools. So I was applying everywhere. I had a job offer in China. I had one at a school in DC. I had one at a Ron Clark or a KIPP school. I can't remember, in Houston. I was literally open, and I was open to taking less money because I was like, I just got to get out of this.
But God said, bring your butt to Dallas because we wouldn't have had you if you had not gotten here.
Yeah. So that was what brought me. I had the interview. It was a phone interview. They sent me an email 30 minutes later that said they wanted to fly me out here to do the whole interview process. It was an all-day thing. And either the next day or the day after, they offered me the job. And then I came here. I never expected to be teaching in a private school. I never expected to be able to count the amount of Black kids that I teach on like one hand some years, but I'm here.
What do you feel like the biggest difference as far as your curriculum? And you were talking about kind of the lack of flexibility you had because you had to teach to the test and all that kind of stuff. Like what are you able to do differently now that you're in
how the two experiences different?
Yeah. So short version, we don't have a test and we don't have like written curriculum. So we can really just do essentially what you want to do. Like the school itself gets to decide. When you're in a public school, there's a state board of education that establishes, what the curriculum is going to be, what textbooks and resources that you can use. So the process of changing those is much more extensive. So at this school, I came in, I was teaching, they hired me to teach US history and world history. So I got the book, I talked to the teacher, I taught, pretty much alongside what she taught those first couple of years, but I was still free to bring in, my other stuff. So I focused on what I wanted to focus on in my classroom. Then I ended up a couple of years after that, completely rewriting the curriculum, which you can't really do in a public school where they're telling you what and how you have to teach. So short version, I taught chronologically previously, and where I would just start with the colonies,
the beginning,
and then go all the way up, to 9/11 or whatever. So I redid the curriculum. So now we do a shorter version of just basic chronology, and then I teach separate units based on topics. So we go through American history by focusing on foreign policy. We go through American history focusing on economic issues or economic events. Now I'm starting a unit where we're going through American history, just focusing on immigration and immigration related issues. So one big difference is I'm able to make those types of changes. I just have to get it approved by my school. I don't have to go through anyone else.
When the election and stuff was going on, did you all kind of use that as a tool?
As a theme?
So yes. And the thing is, you have a lot more independence and flexibility when you're in an independent school, especially the one where I am. So I work very closely with with one of the government teachers. So we are always, bouncing different ideas. So whenever there's an election, he just jumps in. If you're teaching an election during, if you're teaching government or civics during an election year, that's like Super Bowl time for y'all.
You're like, yes. You're like a meteorologist, like, okay, it's a thunderstorm coming. We got excitement happening.
It's here. And whenever there's an election and you're a high school teacher, whatever you're teaching, that's the only time that those kids are going to experience an election while they're in high school. So you kind of have to take that opportunity. Like, I teach US history, but I can't not talk about the election because they're not going to get another presidential election while they're in school. And for me, before they have a chance to vote in one.
I was thinking that. And then you get to leverage that opportunity.
Yeah. So I do, I'm really big on, whatever is going on, like we're going to do something short and focused related to that. Like, I'm not going to let them get everything outside of school. It's like, okay, this is going on. Oh, you heard about this? Boom. So, this is what they're talking about by winning the Electoral College. This is why we have the Electoral College. And, part of it was to make sure that those states that had slavery would be able to keep slavery, So I didn't, completely focus everything on the election, but absolutely brought that into what we were talking about.
I got no Black history while I was in school. Like, they didn't talk about Black nothing. I think Black History Month, you get the Martin Luther King and the typical stuff, but like nothing. And Kim, she was in the segregated schools. And I don't think
we're not. Listen, this is what I call it. It was a HBCU school before we went to college, and Jania, that's all I saw was Black teachers. So when I hear people say, I didn't have a Black teacher, and I'm like, oh, I am so sorry.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And I've heard statistics say that Black teachers have such an impact no matter what color the student is. And so I'm a product of a teacher. My mother is a teacher. And my experience was so different. Like, Black history was not just in February for us. And they made us do reports. And it wasn't just about your typical Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
We all had to take a Black figure, or not a Black historian or someone from Black history. And we had to report about it and get up in front of everyone and present, and sometimes role play. So they were creative with it. So I appreciate that now when I hear someone like Ari say, I didn't hear that. I want to know your thoughts.
My dad taught me Black history. He bought these encyclopedias back in the day when we had encyclopedias and no internet. And he was very like what you would call militant, like back then. And he was like, and today still, but he wants to make sure that I knew, mostly because like we talked about last week with the Creole side of my family.
Yes.
They don't teach us that we Black, really from the beginning. So it's this whole like trying to be, this other thing. So my Blackness, I had to learn a lot about like, okay, showing me the pictures of the ships, that the slaves were brought in on, and like all that. My dad taught me that. I did not learn that in a school, at all. So I think you were about to ask her about like kind of how she, how does she do it? Or
yes. So how do you do that, knowing that number one, you work at a school that's predominantly white? And then what are your thoughts on like people like Aries and I, who children go to a predominantly white school? What are your suggestions about teaching them Black history?
Yeah, so the thing is, over 80% of teachers in America are white women, right? So the experience that you had, Kim, is atypical, right? Like most people don't have one, Black teacher, let alone the majority Black teachers. So I say that to say that most people are in that position when it comes to their children. So you do have to supplement, whether it is providing books and resources for your own kids, having those conversations with them, but then also you got to know what they're learning in school, right? So
correct it.
Yeah. So if they're in a public school, then those standards, those are public. So you can just, take a look at those and see, what exactly they're being taught. Look at whatever those resources are and, bring stuff to those teachers, bring stuff, have conversations with those school administrators, with those school board members. Like they're accountable to you. Your taxes pay them, pay for them, to do their job. So it's not just, you're not stuck with, oh, they don't teach that. No, they're going to teach what they're being told they have to teach.
Mhm.
Right. So if you remember, I think it was in Houston a few years ago, there was a woman that tweeted, she saw the book that her son was using for geography. And they had described, saying that the
Migrant
Black people,
workers?
yeah.
Was that what
Servants
it
or
was?
something?
It was like migrant workers or
Mhm.
something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not instead of slaves or,
Mhm.
whatever.
And it became a huge thing, and it should have,
Mhm.
right? But that's what, parents should do and really must do, to stay engaged. What are they saying? Because the thing is, history, it's stories. So what stories are we telling? It's problematic to not talk about Black people at all, but then it's also problematic to only talk about like the magical, exceptional Negro, right? So
Mhm.
you hear about Martin Luther King and you hear about Rosa Parks, but only in very isolated. We've created like a caricature.
Mhm.
We don't talk about Rosa Parks as being an advocate and how she got into the game by advocating for Recy Taylor, who was raped by I think 5 white men, in the 1940s, and how much of an activist that she was, and this was a decision and a choice for her to participate in the boycott in this way, and how many other people were associated, with that. And same thing for Martin Luther King. We stopped him in 1963 with "I Have a Dream," and we only talk about one part of that, right? We don't talk about him advocating for reparations. We don't talk about him advocating for universal basic income, right?
And at the time, y'all, the people who be like, oh, and Martin Luther King posting their little, y'all, they didn't like him back then.
They really did.
I mean,
they killed him. They literally killed him.
Let's talk about how he died. But I think you're saying a lot of good stuff, because like one of the things I did, and obviously I'm homeschooling the boys now, so I have the freedom. And Jania was one of the first people I had reached out to, like, what am I do? And she was teaching hard history was like such a great resource. That's a podcast too that if you just go through it, I think it's actually for teachers to incorporate how to teach this in your classrooms. And that I actually started listening for myself, because I felt like I didn't know enough. I still don't know enough, about what really was going on, mostly because I didn't like really history that much. But I'm like, it's so intriguing now, like now that I'm older and I'm more interested in that stuff, it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that this was going on. And then it started making sense for me even today when all this stuff started happening with MAGA and all that, and the states' rights. It was kind of that same conversation as we talk about the coronavirus and the pandemic, and we need to be able to do our own thing, and and it's like, this is what they were saying when they were trying to keep them slaves.
History repeats itself.
Exactly. So I'm like, these we started doing, because of them, we can subscription box, and they'll send us something every month with a historical person. Or I mean, we've done Lisa Leslie, we've done and these are not just people who died, it's not like just somebody. It's like we're just going to talk about everybody. They talked about Coretta just last month was Coretta. We have Malcolm X. We had Fannie Lou Hamer. All these people who, like, for me, I'm getting educated, and it has like a little curriculum in it. So I think there's a lot of ways that we could supplement that learning. I'm
creative with it as well, because I guess one of the questions that I have for you too, Jania, is like, now, like when we were going to school, we weren't competing with technology, right? So kids weren't being distracted. How do you keep their attention and like ensure that they comprehend the history? How do you relate it to them?
Yeah, so I'm really big on a high school kid is not learning history for history's sake, right? Like they're not learning history because, oh my gosh, this is so interesting to me. I just love it. I want to read all the things.
Right.
So I'm teaching it focused on why it matters now. Like why do we need to know about, the civil rights movement? Like how does that impact what's going on today, right now, right? So I just finished my unit on like economic issues. So, looking at the stimulus that was provided, as a part of the New Deal, right? And how that connects to, okay, so you see how they were arguing and passing these bills to provide this assistance. And the idea was to stimulate the economy. Okay, so how you saw your parents got that stimulus check, last month. So what was
parents
the
might not
purpose
want
of
them to
that?
know they had it.
Look, exactly. So, but high schoolers, like you said, they're engaging with social media, with TikTok, with Instagram. So they've got questions, they've got comments. So I can just start there. I'm starting with what they know about and connecting that, because it all relates. Nothing's new.
Right.
Why didn't I have Jania as a teacher? I wish I had
know.
her. I could have been smart and knowing all the little things. I know nothing about.
Well, but the other thing too, with what you're talking about with engaging your kids with those that monthly curriculum, the reason why a lot of people don't like history is twofold. One of the reasons is because it's told in a boring way. It's just like, okay, I'm just gonna tell you what happened. And then the other thing is that we tell the same stories over and over and over and over and over again, right? So if I learned about Martin Luther King in 3rd grade, How to Dream, in 4th grade, How to Dream, 5th grade, How to Dream. It's like, okay, you get to high school and it's like, well, there's really nothing else, but oh yeah, he had a dream.
He had a dream. Okay, I get it. Yeah.
Really
and there's so many stories. I mean, even if you just talk about Black people, and people talk about, I don't like slave movies, but even with slavery, there's so many stories within that, like it was
a long time.
It was a
lot of time for a lot of stories to happen. And I feel like the way they teach it is like, okay, there was slavery. Okay, so then moving on after slavery, we'd be like, wait, it was a lot that's 400 years. I mean, like all this stuff, there's a lot of material.
Right. Yeah, there's so much. So you asked about differences. Another thing that's different is I was able to create new courses at my school. So last year I created one on racial issues in American society. So I'm teaching that for the second time right now. Then this year I added one on African American history. So it's purely focused on us. And then next year I'm adding one on Native American history. So looking at American history through the eyes of Indigenous people. So, having the opportunity to kind of tell those stories, because traditionally in an American history course, we are looking at it through the perspective of white men, and usually white men that had some type of notoriety, had some type of fame. We go from president to president to president to president. We don't talk about the people. We don't talk about women. We don't talk about, outside of the exceptional magical ones that we talked about earlier. Right? We don't talk about Black people. We don't talk about LGBTQ plus. So now we have people walking around like, oh my gosh, I have, why are they here? Why are they trying to use my bathrooms? I was like, oh, okay, well, this is not new.
They were here. Yeah.
Always.
Exactly.
Jania is the friend that when we go places, we'll be in Aruba, we'll be in the Bahamas, we'll be in wherever, somewhere tropical or whatever. She finds a museum.
She wants the history. I'm not mad at you.
She will find a museum. She's like, okay, guys. So like we'll be talking about like, okay, you know how you planning your day, like what you're gonna do. She's like, so I'm gonna be at this museum from this time to this time. I'll meet y'all back at the pool, or whatever. And it's like we just know that's what's gonna happen.
I love it.
So she is a true like student of history and learning all about like different places and stuff. So I think that's like super cool because I never go with her.
Teacher too. And I got to shout out my daughter's teacher at St. Philip's. She was amazing in history, like to the fact that Kiara will come home and I'm like, what? Girl, I didn't even know that. When your children can teach you some history, that's how you know that teacher is powerful and impactful. And you seem like that.
And she posts things sometimes with things that her students have written about her and how it's like later, how it's impacted them later and how they view the world and stuff, which I think is super valuable, especially in a predominantly white school where they're not going to get that from anywhere else. And so when they get exposed to someone who's like, hey, this is someone who you're comfortable with, who you can hear, them speak and actually trust what they're saying. And then they're like, hey, you may change child's view of the world going forward, you know, at this point. So it's like truly being able to change the
That's
world one
real
kid at a
impact.
time. Yeah, exactly.
And we
So
appreciate that because you aren't
we
the
need
person
it.
that's cleaning at the
Listen,
school. Because I'm gonna tell you, my daughter wanted to go to this private school, and I was like, our only Black person I see is cleaning and cooking. You can't go there. I'm like, I'm sorry.
something interesting happened. I hope this lady doesn't listen to the podcast today. But something interesting happened where we were talking. I'm not gonna say what group I was talking to, but she was like, you know how you do like what's unique about you or what's, you know, whatever. And people were just giving kind of like a fun fact or whatever. And she said, I just, you know, found out that like she did a whole genealogy, found out that her family was from derived from the pilgrims or whatever. And she has this like document that says it and like excited, right? And I was sitting there like, I feel weird, like in this, even just because I feel like, you know, what we were told about the pilgrims and da, 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 and it's like to be like you have a whole different view of America than I do.
Exactly.
For you to be like with pride, you know, I just found out that I'm this, and you're like, I don't know, like, and so I'm kind of trying, we're on video, so I'm trying to keep my face kind of like
Video would have probably gone off then.
yeah, I'm like,
Right.
okay. I mean, congratulations, I guess. I mean, you know, so just the view of how we see America.
Yeah.
We didn't even get to the world, right? Like just America. We got enough material within America than anywhere else. So yeah. I mean, this stuff is super interesting. I think as I get older now, I'm getting interested. Like you said, your kids were like, I don't care about this. You know, we're like, how am I gonna use this later on in life? You know,
Right.
so I like that you use current times and things that you know that are relevant to them, you know, for them to get it. Because I did see a TikTok. What was the TikTok? You mentioned something.
Do you use TikTok for your students, Jania? Do you use TikTok?
I don't. I follow. I follow.
Okay.
But I'm not. Mm-mm.
So for people who are listening right now who are like, I need to learn more about Black history,
as an adult and as to educate my child.
Like, what would you say is a good way to start? Jania will have you reading 50 books, y'all. She's a reader. She reads. How many books do you read in a month?
I don't know.
Like she said, I don't know. That scares me.
She has her library card is like probably all falling apart and stuff.
First of all, it's the 21st century.
I know, I'm just being extra.
Electronic. I have 6 library cards in 6 different states.
See?
Shout out to my friends that are amazing and let me borrow books on theirs. So, you know,
see,
that is what I do. But yeah, to start, one thing is there's a lot of people that don't really connect with history until after they're out of school, right? So you don't have to feel like you're behind. There are always new books and resources that are coming out, and history, the interpretations of it change over time, right? So we're talking about stories that people are telling about events that happened in the past. So I would say just start with something that you're interested in. Start with someone that you're interested in. You know, you can read some memoirs, read some biographies. For kids, if they're interested in sports, you know, pick a story about a particular athlete that plays the sport that they like, you know. So I just found last year a book subscription service called Just Like Me Books, and they send a box, so it's similar to what you said, Aries, and it's you tell how old your kids are, and they'll curate books for that targeted to that age group.
Girl, you didn't mess up because you're going
that is awesome.
Yeah, it's Black owned, Black books, and actually, my one of my best friends, I have a subscription for her daughter. That's one of my godchildren. So I think I don't know what I got, like 6 months or something. So she'll send me a video, and so the one that they sent this month, they were targeted towards like Valentine's Day, and so these are children's books with Black people in them. So, you know, what parents can do, you know, one thing is making sure that those images that your kids are seeing the books that they're reading, they have our faces. And now in 2021, it's much, much, much easier to find them. I don't know how my grandma was doing it when I was a kid, because I ain't had no white dolls, y'all. I didn't have my books were all black. Like my grandma didn't play that. But now, it's much easier to find those, and it makes such a difference because kids, I think they say as young as 3 months, 3 to 6 months, they can notice differences in race.
Ooh,
right?
wow.
So people say, kids are too young to learn about these things. And I was like, well, only white people are saying that.
Right.
Because if you're young enough to experience racism, then you're young enough to learn about it. Right. And for all of us growing up, we had our own experiences and our parents were telling us. So, we weren't surprised by George Floyd. We're surprised that you're surprised.
Exactly.
Man.
Like, why are you?
Like, you're just now realizing that? And my mother was just like you, like black books, I say dolls because I'm from Chicago, dolls. We always say dolls. Give me that doll. She was very intentional, and I am very intentional with my daughter. And she even remembers we would literally go to the bookstore at least every other week and pick up a black book.
I didn't experience that.
Really?
But I had all kinds. Like I had a blonde hair dolls, I had black dolls, I had Hispanic looking doll. I mean, I probably had, if I look at like my
diversity.
Barbies, I had diversity in my doll set.
Rainbow Coalition.
Yes, I had a Cabbage Patch. My aunt she was like a collector or whatever, so she would always order me Cabbage Patch. I had every color, every hair, like all the things. So like, and that's because I think in the Bay, that's like how we live. Everything, like it was literally diversity everywhere. So it was kind of just a part of it, but. I am intentional about that with my boys because I know that we're in a predominantly white area and Marvin recognized race when he was like 3, like when he first said something to me about something. And I was like, I don't remember this being like the conversation at 3, but we got to talk about it.
Doesn't surprise me about Marvin at all.
He is so
Professor.
Extra. Yes. So, I was gonna. It was something on there that I was gonna ask about. So you mentioned like how people should use that as a tool, kind of like buying books that have our faces on them, and we have a lot of white listeners, as well. So I think, and when I'm talking to them, I say something. I say the same thing as far as like buy books for your kids that got black kids in it. Like they're gonna be around black kids, So I think that's super good. Last week we talked about something about colorism and this goes along with it, but I just, we gotta bring it up since we got the historian.
Exactly.
We can talk about it. But you saw the story with like Danny Lee. What was it? Danny Lee? Danny Lay?
She's the baby's girlfriend.
Okay.
She did a song called Yellow Bone is what he wanted or whatever.
Oh, I didn't dig too deep in it, but I did see that trending.
And so as you studied African American history, and all that. And I kind of brought up some things about like my, part of my family that colorism was like, it's just a part of the culture. Like you see it where it's like light skin versus dark skin and all this. And we see it already, right now. We joke about it sometimes even, be like, oh, you acting light skinned or, whatever.
Right.
What is your, historically, what is your thoughts around like how we should be behaving now based on, your knowledge of kind of where it came from and all that good stuff? Like, I don't know, because I feel like I've slowly stopped the joking. As I don't joke about it as much like I used to, because I just feel like it's kind of keeping it going.
But within our own culture. And I experienced it going to a segregated school. Oh, she's real dark. Oh, she's ugly because she's dark. Or, look at her. You can tell she's dirty. Look, she's real yellow. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize that was colorism until I got older. Like, Black folks, we just roast each other sometimes. And we don't even realize the damage that really truly can have on someone.
What is your thoughts on that, just as a culture and ways that we could help ourselves, because we want white people to be like, we accept us and our blackness and all our black, and then when we in our space, we're not necessarily doing that for our, for each other.
Yeah. So basically, that's a byproduct of existing in a society based on white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Right. So we associate and assign privilege based on proximity to whiteness. Yep. So the closer that you are, whether it is skin color or whether it is, economic status or whatever you can do to adopt, or if it's in your speech, you are trying to subscribe to that particular notion. Mm-hmm. So because of the ways in which privilege was extended and taken away, historically speaking, we have, made the jokes and experienced, punishment and all sorts of things. So it's basically, short version, it's very deeply embedded, but we have to acknowledge, understand, and recognize that, right? Yeah. So if you're light skinned, it's because of a relationship with a white person. And during a time of enslavement, that was typically because the enslaver raped the enslaved person, right? So there would be, there's a lot of times we talk about like light skin, you were in the house, you were this, and it was easier. Right. And it was, if we really want to keep it funky, it was actually harder.
I said this to somebody
in the house
because I said, think about it when we think about right now, even in the corporate America and all that, and in, working blue collar worker versus white collar, whatever. You are right there with them. They right in your face, looking at you all doggone you day.
Even closer, right?
Exactly.
They have a closer eye on you.
Exactly.
Whereas somebody in the field, like, ain't coming yet.
Yeah, exactly. You're not right there. So I think that is definitely a misconception that people always be like, well, you was a house Negro or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so you was just like you was in there living like them or something. It's like, right. I'm up in here. I still gotta work all doggone day with them all in my face while I'm working at the same time. So yeah, I mean, I think we gotta just dispel those myths that we've been told and keep retelling like they were facts. And I think that does come from a lack of knowledge of what really was going on. And you know what? That show, is it Underground?
Mm-hmm. I like Underground.
That was a good view of kind of some of that, I mean, obviously it's TV, so you're not going to get it so much, but I was just like, I liked how they kind of told that story with the mom. She had kids in the field. She had kids in the house. She had kids on different, she had to be strategic in so many different ways to keep everybody safe. It wasn't good. None of it was good, so I like that you pointed that out, because I think that's definitely where it comes from. And then just people not knowing their history, and not knowing. So,
and then also you have to know and then recognize like when you're doing it, right? Because criticizing someone for their hair or their skin color, that's like you've internalized those racist ideas, which a lot of us have. Like people criticize Ibram Kendi's, some of his work, but the point remains that we are living in a white supremacist society that's based on racism, and you can't exist without learning those ideas. We're told that Black businesses are shady. You can't trust them. They're not smart. They're not they can't. They're not competent, right? So we have to constantly identify those beliefs and actively dismantle them. But it's not like, okay, now I'm not embracing racist ideas anymore. No, you have to constantly do that. It's a process, well, why don't I, why aren't I going back to that restaurant, that Black restaurant that gave me, the food was too salty, or it was this. And then, I'm never going there again because, Black restaurants, they don't know how to do right. But
look, Jania has been with me where we go to Black restaurants. If something ain't right, I will literally pull the manager or the owner like
Yep.
to the side privately, have a conversation like, okay, like, because I want this to go well. So when I'm giving feedback, it ain't like, this is how grown.
Exactly.
I'll be like, look, like, come on, like, let's, just talk it through or whatever. But I think if you're really trying to support the Black business,
Yeah.
and we don't have as much resources sometimes, we don't have as much, at our disposal. So yes, I like that, because even when I think the thoughts, because they come naturally because we've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
So you want to say something and you be like, I'm not gonna say that, like even simple things like nappy head, like there's so many parts just from our hair alone. And what is good hair and what is
Right.
not good hair, and just all that stuff. It's a lot.
I'm hoping we've evolved and it's changed. I don't see it or hear it much, but I'm not at school, right, with Black kids.
It ain't just at school.
Or I mean, I'm not around people or friends that say your hair is nappy or whatever, right? I'm just hoping with us embracing our Blackness more, that there is less of that.
I think it is. It's getting better.
Well, it's definitely changed. I mean, when I cut my hair the first time, gosh, that was almost 18 years ago.
Mhm.
And no one, there were very few people that were natural at that time. This was way before I used to have a shirt. I was natural before the hype.
Mhm.
There was nothing, I was getting my hair done at a barber was doing my hair because no one else could do it. Every single Black owned shop, all they had was the perm, 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 perm. So, what did you do to your hair? When are you going to do your hair? My grandma was, so you're going to keep it like that.
So you just want your hair looking all over, all crazy. That was my mama when I first cut mine all off.
And like you said, our minds have been conditioned like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so just even when you look at that and how many people are, and have embraced it. I mean, you go in Target or even Walmart and they got a whole
natural aisle.
Yes, that is so new.
Dedicated to us, which, part of it I don't like. I still want to go to the stuff that Black people actually own. Because, once they get a hold of it, then they want to just, okay, now we can commodify this and try to take advantage. Like, no, we still got to respect
I go directly to the websites.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pay them their coins.
And I don't even want to say this, but sometimes I don't like going to beauty supply stores.
Well, yeah. Because the same exact reasons, right? Like, I mean, this is it's a part of that's why when we talk about Black wealth and economic empowerment and all these things, it's like we have to be intentional. It's going to cost you a couple more dollars to support a Black owned business.
Yep.
We were just sharing with me and Jania were sharing with one of our friends, the bookstores, online bookstores that I go to purchase. Like when I buy those books for my boys, I'm usually buying them from off of Uncle Bobby's or one of those in bookshop, or whatever.
Yep.
So that I could try to support as much as I can. I do still use Amazon when I want to hurry up and get something for something else, but I don't do that as frequently as I used to. I go straight there. So I try to, I think we can support each other, like with us getting the shirts and, different things that we're purchasing, going to someone who's Black in order to help, just fuel that as much as possible. What other questions we got for Jania? I feel like,
we have really, I think we've covered everything. Jania, is there anything you want to just share with anyone? I'm like,
what do you want people to know about?
Yeah, I'm listening.
What we need to know about.
Jania needs a Black History podcast. Well, not a Black History podcast, but
there's so much. But what I will say is that a lot of people are talking about Black history during, Black History Month, right?
Okay.
So I think my thing with that people might be surprised to learn or know is that I don't really celebrate Black History Month in my classes. So, hearing me teaching, it's like, okay, you're a teacher and you don't do Black History Month. I don't. I'm a huge fan, of course, of Black history. I reread The Miseducation of the Negro almost every year. Carter G. Woodson, who wrote it, was the founder of Negro History Week, which became Black History Month. And the idea was never to only focus on and talk about and acknowledge Black history in February, right? Like
month of the year.
Well, and that's a misconception, and it's a funny one. It's we get the shortest month. It needs to be every month. But Carter G. Woodson chose it because Black people were recognizing and celebrating Abraham Lincoln for his role in emancipation, and his birthday is February 12th. And Frederick Douglass, who was also essential to that role, his birthday is February 14th. So he chose that week since Black people were already celebrating and honoring that. So that was the week that was chosen because of them. And then it expanded to a month in 1976. So the idea that if you're a white person and you're reading Black books during February, or you're, learning Black information, or you're checking the Black Story tab on Netflix or Amazon Prime, like, it's not just about February, it's about, go deeper, right? Like, slavery impacted every single aspect of American society. And it is the reason that the United States enjoyed any sort of economic success. And to not acknowledge that and understand the ways in which we are still living with the legacies of it, then you're not acknowledging the truth about America.
That's where we come with that systemic piece. Systemic piece.
Yeah. I mean, it's very systemic. And if you're not, talking about reparations, if you're not talking about meaningfully eliminating these barriers to wealth, right? We're talking about $10,000 on student loans or $50,000 in student loans. Really, it all needs to be canceled.
Come on, that's what we really need to do.
That's the conversation. If the president and this isn't his role, he would never do this, which is one of the reasons he wasn't my choice at first. Right. He wasn't my choice until he was the only
one left.
Yeah. But like, if you're serious about dismantling racism, then you have to go to those sources of it. Right. So when we talk about wealth, the racial wealth gap, I think, it's insanely, the gap is insanely wide between.
I think they said, what is it, 24,000 is the median Black, what do they call it?
Income.
Net worth or something like that. And then it was like 181,000 for a white family. And I'm like, now that's, and like 36,000 for a Hispanic family or whatever. So it's like, we got some issues. And it's pretty clear where they are, and most of those families that have the pride in being like, I'm from here, y'all benefited from our Black backs, being beaten down, for free labor, to provide for this economic engine that we call America. So, yeah.
And even if you look at that with the wealth gap, the primary indicator for wealth and generator, I guess, is home ownership, right? And from, part of the New Deal, which was the plan that Franklin Roosevelt supported and initiated to help rebuild the nation's economy after the Great Depression, part of that included creating home mortgage loans for a program to offer people loans to be able to purchase homes. Right. So Black people were excluded from that. Exactly. So people asked where to start. The Color of Law it's a book. And I think there's actually a documentary based on that documentary. Yeah. So look up the documentary if you're not a reader, but to see how Black people were systematically excluded from being able to purchase homes for 40 or 50 years, 40 something years. Then those policies ended in 1968. But at that point, you've got people that were able to purchase homes for themselves, pay them off, okay, buy other homes, continue to build equity, use that to create trust funds for their children, and send their kids to schools like where I teach.
Yes.
Right. So that's how I teach it to my kids. I show them the maps. And if you hear about redlining.
Yeah.
Adam Ruins Everything has an episode on redlining. It's like 6 minutes. It's really good.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
I show a map of Dallas that shows their districts where they gave those loans. And the areas that were red were where Black people lived, and they couldn't get loans to purchase those homes. So then I show a map of Dallas today, broken down by where people live by race. And then I show a map of Dallas today that shows where people live by income levels.
Wow.
So we're looking at, these patterns, and it's like, oh, well, why do we have to talk about that? Because we're still living with those repercussions.
Why not talk
This
about
is
it?
a reality still.
The schools like where I teach, there's within probably a 5-mile radius, there's probably 5 or 6 schools that are similar to mine in terms of being private and expensive. But when you go south of 20, in Dallas, which is traditionally a dividing line, and we won't talk about how the highways were used to dismantle Black communities. We can't even get into all of that right now. But it's really important to, you asked about a starting point. Start with where you live, right? Go to, look up Black history in your particular city. The African American History Museum of Dallas is a great, resource, and there's a lot of stories and there's a lot of history that we're continuing to learn. We're living with these legacies today. Like the reason more Black people aren't, owners in the NFL isn't because they don't have the talent. It's because they don't have the capital, and they don't have the capital because they haven't been able to generate that capital because they've been systematically excluded.
Oh, Jesus. It's so much. We need to just start doing courses on.
I know.
Give us the Zoom link to your class.
I was thinking that, like, let's come up with a curriculum on educating. But as we close this out, Jania, we really appreciate this. Tell us, what is your favorite book? Your favorite Black history book? Ooh. Well, you already mentioned the Miseducation of a Negro.
Yeah, Miseducation of a Negro is definitely one. I guess a shout out because it's Black History Month. My favorite recently, right, would be Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel.
I got it.
I'm getting ready to read it.
I got it. Okay, we're gonna read it.
Let's read it together.
I got it in
we
there.
We can hold each other accountable.
That's my next one. So yeah.
We read at the same pace.
And it's thick.
I could never be on your.
Yeah, it's thick. So it actually came out a while ago.
A long time ago. She has
I didn't read it partially because of that. I was like, oh, that one's real long. And I would just read other stuff, and I own it. So I was like, okay, I can get to that one anytime.
Right.
So then she came out with a new book last year called Cast. And so I was like, oh man, I need to read Warmth of Other Suns. So I started it, and I mean, I could not put it down. Now that one I probably did read really quickly, but so for those that don't know, it's a history of the Great Migration.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Great Migration is the largest internal migration of a particular group in American history.
Right.
So Black people left the South over, there were different waves of it, and there were probably about 4 million people that moved, and they moved north, they moved west, and she picked 4. The research was impeccable. I mean, and she told the stories of 4 people over an extended period of time, and getting into the reasons like why they left, where they went, and how that impacted those cities. So literally I was reading, and people would pick where they would go based on the train lines. So there was a line from someplace to Pontiac, Michigan, and a lot of my family was in Pontiac, Michigan. So I took a screenshot of that page and I sent it to my family, and I was like, hey, is this, this is probably how our people got, up there. And, so that easily, I could go on about that book, but easily
I asked my dad about
recently.
That I was asking my dad about that because both sides, my dad, they were living in Detroit and Memphis, but they went from Memphis, Detroit, and then to California. And I was like, how did y'all get to California? Like, what made y'all go? He said, we stayed with another family for a little while. And I'm like, how did y'all meet them? How'd you know?
That's your own family history.
Yeah. So like learning that, how they all got there, and how did you meet these people? Oh, we knew them through, another type of network.
Else. Yeah.
Yeah. Network. And then they let you stay at their house for this amount of time. And then y'all got your own, but just how much you had to go through to go through that change, like that says a lot. So when I tell people I'm from California and they say, why you sound like you from the country? I'm like, because technically I am from the country because my family's from the South. But
well, all of us are. Like, whenever you meet someone that's in the North, you do not have to go back far to figure out. Like, my people, okay, Tennessee, and Florida, like they were in the South, like, nah, I'm born and raised in New York, boogie down Bronx. Okay, but your people were in the South.
So my dad is probably 5 years removed from being a slave, and he migrated. No, he migrated to Chicago. So where
was he from? Mississippi,
Louisiana.
Okay, I'm about to say Louisiana.
And so I was I've always known about the Great Migration being in Chicago and so that's how I came up on that book. And I was like, well, I really want to read this because my dad and uncle migrated, right? And then I had other aunts. It was like a portion went to Chicago, a portion went to California. They all kind of migrated. But like you said, everyone's from the South.
Yep.
So we're going to read that book. That's going to be our next kind of read. We're going to have to do it.
Yes, so
I think that'll be really good in education.
I literally was like, I have to pull out this book and read it.
Yeah.
Well, then also Jania, something I know.
No, go ahead. What were we gonna say?
Yeah, please tell us.
Something else that you can do is talk to your family members, your older family members. Get their stories, because that's literally living history, and they. Something else you asked about in terms of connecting things to kids. So like having them interview people that live through, some of these different events, or that know people that live through some of these events. That's a way to kind of make it relevant. Real. And, so talking to your family, looking at those historical sites and museums, like in your city. So those are the types of things that you can do as a family. And those experiences that your children have at a young age, they're formative, and you want your kids to have that information so that they can compare and contrast when they go to school.
That is true. I told them that I want them. I was like, look, I need y'all to learn all this so that when your teacher try to tell you something, you be like, excuse me, ma'am. Right. I said, I don't care if you get in trouble. I'll deal with that later. But I want you to know the real truth. And so I'm glad that you are in, for as long as you're going to be doing it. I don't know how long, because you got other things going on that we ain't even going to tap on, but we're going to have to bring you back once you start really, I like how, like having you in the system right now, like in there, you are changing and impacting these kids' lives. Like you said, even with these high school kids, they're formative as well, right? They're going to be like, I remember my teacher, and being able to call your name out. And so, I love that. And I'm looking forward to seeing more ways that you can give this knowledge, to more people, because we learned something new today. And we're going to be learning more stuff, just to other folks. So
I knew who created Black History Week because I used to go to his library in Chicago all the time. That was just the hangout spot, Carter G. Woodson. I didn't realize the dates though, the why. And I think we need to dig deeper into the why, like you said. And now, like the interviewing, we have phones recorded.
Exactly. I got my aunt. I got her books. I'm like, come on, we gotta hurry up and get all these stories out as much as we can, because she's one that did that, moved from Louisiana to California. So I want to get that, especially while I start reading this new book. So anyway, Jania, this is my homegirl, y'all. So like, I mean,
she's
this
cool
is
people.
My girl. We could go to the winery. We could go wherever together. So when you have friends like that, you hold on to them and see the type of people that I surround myself with. They're just educated. She is, you know what I mean?
She is.
Anyway, so we love you. We thank you so much.
Thank you, Black Girl of the Month.
Our Bold Black Girl of the Month.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, we love you, and I'll holler at you in a minute. I'll call you back later.
All right, girl.
Thank you so much, Jania, for coming.
Bye.
Welcome. Thank you. Bye.